Only 269 new homes were sold in the GTA last month, making it the worst January in the home building industry since 19...
comes to an end, the industry will be slowing down, and we're looking at the potential for about 100,000 layoffs across.
In the Greater Toronto Area, only 269 new homes were sold in January 2026. This was an extremely low number and the weakest January the region has seen in more than 40 years. In fact, it was the lowest number of new homes sold in the month of January since 1981.
Only 85 condos sold last month, which is a 50% drop compared to last year and down 89% from a 10-year.
Across the GTA, home sales have dipped and so too have prices. Not surprising, says real estate agent Gus Papaayanu, who also points to an oversaturated
100,000 job losses in the last 9 months.
That comparison shows just how serious the slowdown has become. The figures clearly point to a major downturn in the home building industry across the region. When compared to normal market conditions and long-term averages, the drop is dramatic. Builders, developers, and real estate professionals are facing a market that is moving at a much slower pace than what has typically been expected at the start of a new year.
69 homes sold last month. That's 36% less than the year before and a whopping 80% drop from the 10-year January average. The head of Chestnut Hill Developments has 6 projects in the works, with digging for the wild slated to begin later this.
Following on the worst year on record, which was 2025.
Looking back to December 2025, the situation was already concerning. During that month, only 240 new homes were sold across the Greater Toronto Area. That total was not just slightly lower than usual, it was far below what has been normal over the past decade.
Construction that you see occurring today is a result of past sales activity occurring 2, 3, 4 years ago. Once that construction comes to an end, the industry will be slowing.
The Toronto Regional Real Estate Board reports more than 3,300 homes were sold in December, down 1.8% from the same time a year.
In fact, December sales were 82% below the 10-year average for the region. That means the market performed at less than 1/5 of its usual level for that time of year. December is often slower than spring months, but such a sharp decline showed that the housing market was struggling in a serious way. Compared to the average pace of activity over the last 10 years, December 2025 stood out as an exceptionally weak month.
I think the biggest cause right now is a lack of confidence on the buyer's side.
Meanwhile, 184 single-family homes sold, which is a 26% drop compared to the year before and 68% lower than the 10-year.
Just listings are a lot higher. There's a lot of choice for buyers right now.
When January 2026 arrived, there were hopes that the new year might bring some improvement. However, the market did not show any real signs of recovery. The total number of new homes sold rose slightly from December to 269 units. But this small increase did not change the overall picture. Sales remained extremely low by historical standards. The 269 homes sold marked the lowest January total in over 4 decades. Compared to January of the previous year, sales were down by 36%, which means more than 1/3 fewer homes were sold.
The small units, 300 square feet, 400 square feet, which are 2-car garage units, which are not habitable. And that's where the bulk of the product that we have in our city right now are on the market and can't sell because people can't live in them. This project here is open. It's totally...
New report shows that new home sales in GTA were stuck at lows that we haven't seen in decades. Only 359 properties changed hands in July. This is according to the Building Industry and Land Development Association. That's down 48% from the same month last year and 82%.
When measured against the 10-year average for January, the decline was even more striking. Sales were 80% below the average level seen during the past decade. Records show that numbers this week have not been seen since the early 1980s, a time when interest rates were very high and the economic environment was very different from today. This comparison highlights how unusual and severe the current slowdown has become.
Neighborhoods that have highly rated schools, transit, walkability will always be sought after.
To the east, he says there are more affordable options.
Even if you're willing to go to the edge of Scarborough or into Scarborough, you can find homes in that $1 million mark, whether it's a semi-detached or possibly even a detached bungalow that needs
A slow month, but experts say right now buyers have more power to negotiate.
Anything in the pipeline that comes after that, you're looking at very tight supply conditions that will, in the end, drive up.
At present, there is a lot of inventory out there, close to 15,000 condos and nearly 6,000 single-family dwellings.
Sales in February 2026 continued to reflect the same weak conditions. During that month, only 359 new homes were sold across the Greater Toronto Area. Although this total was higher than January, it was still far below normal levels. Compared to February of the previous year.
So, Bill, it's really symptomatic that people are still sitting on the sidelines as it applies to the purchasing of new homes. This is a trend that's been going on for about 8 months now, where we've seen historic lows across.
come and gone, with the exception of a couple neighborhoods and a couple home types such as detached. You can take your time, you can do your due diligence, you can even go visit.
Sales dropped by 48%, meaning nearly half as many homes were sold. When compared to the 10-year average for February, the decline was even deeper at 82% below typical levels. These numbers show that the housing market did not bounce back in the second month of the year. Instead, the trend of historically low sales continued. This steady weakness suggests that the slowdown was not just a short-term dip, but part of a broader and ongoing downturn affecting the region.
And is resulting in the levels of sales that this report has indicated, 359 new homes. That's 83% of the 10-year average.
And so these are new homes. Like, we have shots right now from Chopper 24 showing like established, communities that's been there for decades. Are we talking new builds that have never been lived in before?
Yeah, we're talking new builds, new condominiums, new.
The condominium market in the Greater Toronto Area has also been hit hard by this slowdown. In the third quarter of 2025, total condominium sales reached just 316 units. That figure represents the lowest quarterly total for condominiums in 35 years. Such a low number is highly unusual for a large and busy housing market like the GTA. When compared to the 10-year average, condominium sales were down by 92% during that quarter. This means that the market was operating at only a very small fraction of its typical pace.
Why do we think that is? Is it because people either sit on the sidelines or they just simply don't want that kind of house?
No, it really is a factor of they're sitting in the sidelines. We've interest rates are still, albeit they've come down from their peak, but they're higher than they have been in the previous decade.
The condo sector, which has long been a major part of housing supply in the region, has clearly experienced a dramatic pullback. January 2026 was especially difficult for condominium sales. During that month, only 85 condo units were sold. This total shows a 50% decline compared to January of the previous year, meaning sales were cut in half.
Real estate numbers are out for Toronto and the GTA, and there was a decline in December compared to the same period a year earlier.
Come 27, 28, we're going to start to see a shortage of product.
When compared to the 10-year average for January, the drop was even more severe at 89% below normal levels. These figures underline just how quiet the condo market has become. Looking at the entire year of 2025 gives an even clearer picture of the slowdown. For the full year, total new condominium sales in the Greater Toronto Area reached 1,599 units.
It says if you build livable homes, there will be buyers, with Build predicting a supply drop that will drive up price starting in late 2020.
That yearly total was down 60% compared to 2024, showing a large year-over-year decline. Even more striking, it was 91% below the 10-year average for annual condo sales. This shows that 2025 was one of the weakest years for new condominium sales in decades. Inventory levels across the region also point to a serious imbalance between supply and demand. There are currently around 15,000 unsold condominium units available in the Greater Toronto Area. In addition, nearly 6,000 single-family homes remain unsold and on the market. When combined, this brings the total number of unsold homes to more than 21,000 units. Such high inventory levels suggest that builders have completed or launched many projects, but buyers have not been purchasing at the same pace. For condominiums alone, the supply represents about 7 months of inventory. This is the highest level recorded in 20 years. A higher months of supply figure generally means that it would take longer to sell all available units at the current sales pace, which can put downward pressure on prices and create financial strain for developers. Sales of single-family homes have also slowed significantly. In January 2026, only 184 single-family homes were sold in the Greater Toronto Area. This number is 26% lower than the number sold in January of the previous year. Compared to the 10-year average for single-family home sales in January, the decline is even larger at 68% below normal levels. These figures show that the slowdown is not limited to condominiums alone, but is affecting all parts of the new home market. Buyers appear to be holding back, whether due to higher borrowing costs, economic uncertainty, or affordability challenges. As a result, both condos and single-family homes are selling at a much slower rate than what has historically been typical for the region. Similar trends are being seen in other regions of Canada as well. In Metro Vancouver, for example, there are currently around 2,500 brand-new condominium units sitting empty. These are fully completed buildings that have never been lived in, meaning they are brand new and yet remain unoccupied. The number of unsold units in Metro Vancouver has doubled compared to the previous year, showing a sharp increase in available but unsold properties. This situation highlights that the housing slowdown is not just a problem in the Greater Toronto Area, but is affecting other major urban centers across the country as well. It demonstrates that across Canada, new home sales are struggling to match the levels seen in previous years, and builders and developers are left with completed projects waiting for buyers who are not coming at the usual pace. Looking at sales data from the Toronto Regional Real Estate Board, over 3,300 homes were sold in December 2025. While this is a relatively high number compared to monthly figures earlier in the year, it still represents a decline of 1.8% compared to December 2024. This small but noticeable drop shows that the market is cooling, even in months when sales activity tends to be stronger. At the same time, resale condominium prices in the region have declined substantially, falling by roughly 13 to 14% from their peak levels in 2022. New home prices have also seen a reduction, moderating by approximately 20% from the highest points reached in recent years. These trends indicate that both new home sales and resale markets are experiencing slower growth in prices. While there is still demand, the rate at which prices are rising has slowed considerably, reflecting the overall weakening of the housing market in the Greater Toronto Area and in other parts of Canada. Much of the construction activity currently taking place in the region reflects sales activity from previous years rather than immediate demand. Many of the homes that are under construction today were pre-sold 2 to 4 years ago. This means that even though construction continues at a visible pace, it does not fully represent current buyer interest. Builders are completing projects that were already committed to, so the visible construction does not necessarily indicate that demand is strong today. Instead, it reflects commitments made under different market conditions when buyers were more willing to purchase homes in advance. As a result, while the skyline of new developments might look busy, the underlying market demand is still weak, and many units remain unsold after construction is finished. Interest rates have also changed in recent months, with the Bank of Canada reducing its key lending rate to 2.25%. This is close to the lowest level seen since 2023, and the intention behind these cuts is to help support housing demand by making borrowing cheaper. Lower interest rates typically make it more affordable for buyers to finance a home purchase, potentially boosting sales. However, the current sales figures suggest that even with lower borrowing costs, activity remains historically low. This indicates that while rate reductions may help some buyers, they are not sufficient on their own to restore the market to previous levels of activity. Other factors, such as affordability economic uncertainty, and elevated costs of buying a new home continue to weigh on buyer decisions. In addition, a significant number of Canadian homeowners are expected to face higher mortgage payments in the near future. Approximately 1/3 of all Canadian mortgages are scheduled to reset in 2026. Families whose mortgages were previously locked in at lower interest rates will see their monthly payments increase once these terms reset. This will put additional financial pressure on households, reducing their ability to take on new mortgages or consider purchasing a new home. The prospect of rising monthly costs may discourage some buyers from entering the housing market, further contributing to the slowdown in new home sales. In combination with lower sales figures and high inventory levels, these conditions make it clear that the housing market is under stress and is not recovering quickly. Government fees and regulatory costs also contribute significantly to the overall cost of new homes in the region. In Ontario, for instance, development charges are among the highest in North America. These fees, along with the costs of acquiring land and expenses related to construction, play an important role in determining the final price of a new home. The high cost of bringing a new property to market adds to the financial challenges faced by buyers, particularly when interest rates rise or when income growth is slower. This combination of regulatory costs, land prices, and construction expenses makes it more difficult for new homes to remain affordable, which in turn can slow down sales and extend the time it takes for completed units to be sold. Employment data related to the construction sector provides additional context for understanding the broader economic situation. In Ontario alone, the construction sector employs roughly 225,000 people, both directly and indirectly. This workforce includes tradespeople, site supervisors, project managers, and various support staff who keep construction projects moving. A slowdown in home sales has a direct impact on employment within this sector, as fewer new projects or delayed sales can reduce the demand for labor. This is particularly concerning given the number of people whose livelihoods depend on construction activity, highlighting the ripple effects that declining home sales can have on the wider economy. Reports from industry organizations underscore the scale of the decline in new home sales. For example, a report from the Building Industry and Land Development Association notes that only 359 new properties were sold in July 2025 in the Greater Toronto Area. This represents a drop of 48% compared to July of the previous year and is 82% below the 10-year average for that month. Such figures emphasize that the current slowdown is not just a short-term fluctuation, but part of a larger and ongoing trend that has pushed sales to levels not seen in decades. The impact is evident across multiple months and types of housing, illustrating that the weakness in demand is broad and persistent. Looking forward, around 26,000 condominium units are scheduled to be completed over the next 18 months in the Greater Toronto Area. Despite this planned completion of new homes, pre-sale absorption rates remain low, meaning that buyers are not purchasing units at a pace that would prevent inventory from growing. This continued low demand reflects ongoing challenges for developers, who may finish projects only to find that a significant portion of the units remain unoccupied. While the construction pipeline remains active, the mismatch between supply and demand raises concerns about how quickly the market can recover and what this could mean for prices in the coming months. Housing starts have also been on a declining trend, with builders reporting slower construction of new homes and condominiums due to reduced pre-sale activity. This decline in starts reflects caution among developers who are responding to weaker buyer interest. Research conducted by Urban Nation projects that by 2029, there could be almost no new condominiums ready for sale in the Greater Toronto Area. This projection highlights the potential long-term consequences of current market trends, as a sustained period of weak sales could lead to a future shortage of new supply once the market eventually recovers. The current slowdown, therefore, has implications not only for today's sales, but also for the future availability of housing in the region. Sales activity continues to remain at historic lows. For instance, recent reporting shows that only 359 new homes were sold in a given period, which represents just 83% of the 10-year average. These figures refer specifically to newly built homes, including pre-construction sales, newly completed condominiums, and other newly developed communities. The continued weakness in sales across these categories underscores the depth of the slowdown and the difficulty the market is facing in returning to normal levels of activity. Government efforts to support housing sales have included some small policy adjustments. These measures include discussions of reduced development charges and HST relief for first-time buyers purchasing homes under $1 million. While such measures may provide limited assistance to some buyers, they have not been sufficient to reverse the broader trend of low demand. The underlying conditions in the housing market, high costs, rising mortgage payments, and general caution among buyers continue to exert a strong influence, keeping overall sales figures below historical averages. An example of recent declines in resale prices demonstrates the extent of the price corrections that have taken place. In an area east of Toronto, a home purchased in September 2024 for $2.3 million was sold approximately 1 year later for $1.2 million. This represents a decrease of $1.1 million over that period, showing that home values can fall sharply in a short period when market conditions weaken. Such large declines can have significant effects on homeowners' equity and confidence in the housing market, and they reinforce the reality that both new and resale properties are being affected by slower sales and price moderation. Job losses in related sectors also illustrate the broader economic impact of the slowdown. In the fourth quarter of 2025, Canada recorded a total of 259,000 job cuts. Within that period, the government sector alone reduced employment by 308,000 positions, while the technology sector cut 154,000 jobs. Part-time employment across the country also declined, dropping by nearly 1 million positions. In addition, roughly 1.8 million Canadians were actively seeking work for 27 weeks or longer. These figures show that the effects of the housing market slowdown extend beyond real estate itself and have broader implications for the national economy and the labor market. Industry analysts estimate that Ontario could lose around $20 billion in economic activity if the housing slowdown continues. These losses would affect more than just builders, extending to suppliers, hardware and appliance retailers, restaurants near construction sites, and transportation companies that support construction activity. The ripple effects of declining home sales touch multiple sectors, demonstrating that the housing market is closely tied to broader economic health in the region. Slower sales not only affect developers' revenue, but also reduce business for countless companies and workers connected to the industry, highlighting the wider consequences of a prolonged market slowdown.